What is going on, my beautiful brothers and sisters? My name is Jamal Pope, aka J Phoenix, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the chart of the vernal equinox. I know it is a couple of days after so, but you have to look at these ingresses as a sort of rubber stamp on the new astrological year. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. We're going to be discussing that and seeing what this year has in store. What's up, everyone? Astrologer J Phoenix here, and I know it's been a little bit since I made a video in this way. I know I've just been kind of in and out in general, but considering the state of things right now, the state of the world right now, honestly, I know I need to be making these. And honestly, I was kind of in like this weird energy of not really producing a lot, just in general, but consuming a lot, and that brings imbalance, and I think this is going to be a year where we are looking to bring more balance into our lives and really find ourselves and really kind of discover who we really are. But there's definitely going to be some interesting bumps along the way. So, I mean, this last Pisces season was nothing short of bewildering, with Saturn here, with the sun here, with Neptune there, with the sun conjuncting Neptune at 29 degrees, and Saturn, of course, being there. We have a Mercury retrograde that we threw on top of this. We had a Venus retrograde that we're throwing on top of this. The energy's been crazy. I've been talking to everyone I talked to has not been getting good sleep. No one's getting good sleep. Like, you might be fortunate to get a solid 4 or 5 hours or so, but a lot of people are having weird dreams. A lot of people aren't getting really good sleep, and things are just turned upside down, topsy-turvy, inside out. It's been a wild ride. And now we're finally here at this Aries season. As the time I make this, of course, it's Saturday, March 22nd. So, we've been here for a couple of days now. And, I don't think this is going to be the Aries season that has the pop that we wanted to. I think we'll have a little bit more of a pop than last year's, even though last year, of course, we had the eclipse there, and we're actually barreling towards another eclipse that we'll be having in just, about a week's time or so, maybe sooner. But this is going to be an interesting year to say the least. And when I was looking at the chart for the sun ingressing into Aries at 0000, there were some things that I definitely noticed that I really want us to pay attention to, and I wanted to talk about. I know in the last video I mentioned how I want to talk about Mars and Venus a little bit, but I felt like that this was more important to talk about, and I would be remiss if I didn't speak on it and provide my insight, if you will, and feedback on these energies. Now, I'm not going to go through every single all the 12 signs and how it's going to affect every sign. But what I will be doing is I will be looking at the houses. I'm essentially going to be treating this chart as if it was a person, right? And that's the interesting thing about mundane astrology, is that it affects all of us. We all have our personal charts, of course, and how different things that are happening, that are aligning in the sky, and how they can affect us. But this mundane chart does show how things affect us as a whole, and if you peer out far enough, we are one whole organism. It's just many different parts. It's kind of like if you look at like a jellyfish or something. And jellyfish seems like it's one cohesive structure, and it is, but it's really the combination of millions of smaller organisms. Just like we are the collection of millions and billions of cells, we as humanity, or even the animals here, compromise one large organism that is the earth, right? So it's important to look at the mundane astrology. It's important to look at past dates to see, when the last time that Uranus was in this spot, this is what happened. And now we can kind of look at current times and we say, so Uranus is back in that spot. Are some of those same themes playing out? These are important things to take into consideration. So when you get to the vernal equinox, right? So spring, first sign of the zodiac, the sun has moved into Aries. It's moved into its exaltation. The reason being is that it's climbing higher and higher into the sky. And that's what the sun wants to be. It wants to be as high in the sky as possible, right? And the days become longer, if you will. So this is a great place for the sun to be. And this is the start of, the new astrological year. So this chart is important to kind of see what is going to be the sort of flavor of the year. Now, of course, this chart, the potency of the chart is really going to be the most potent for 3 months, when the sun is in Aries, when the sun is in Taurus, and when the sun is in Gemini. Because by the time that the sun comes into Cardinal, it kind of makes that first turning, if you will. And that's what the cardinal signs are all about. Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. They are about the change of direction and, of course, the stepping into a new season. The fixed signs kind of are like the height of that season, kind of solidifies that season. The only reason why they're fixed, it is sort of like it takes every aspect of that season and it kind of just throws even more seasoning on it. It's if you think about it, it's like if you go into a new season, okay, you add some seasoning, right? We're going to add some sugar to this. Or we're going to add something that makes it a little bit sour, something a little bit spicy. When you get to the fixed signs, it takes it up a whole notch, sometimes a little too much, which is why sometimes the fixed signs can seem like they're a bit too much, maybe too much to handle, right? Maybe they're too spicy, maybe it's too sweet, maybe it's too intense, if you will. It brings it to its intensity. Then you reach the mutable signs, which is all about the mutability of things, the changeability of things, and that even though things may seem fixed, everything changes in due time. And then you come right back around to the cardinal signs, which changes the direction once again. So when you take the look at a chart for these different positions, the equinoxes and the solstices, they are important points that are going to, tell a story. And the sun in Aries does tell an overarching story for the entire year, albeit a new flavor, of course, will be added once the sun reaches Cancer, and we'll talk about that. But in this video, like I said, I wanted to go over this with you all because, like I said, this is a very interesting chart, and, I think it's something that we're going to want to have to pay attention to, right? So let's go ahead and take a look. And like I said, I'm going to go house by house, but I'm also going to just talk about a couple of things right off the bat that just kind of jump out at me, right? So, of course, I ran this chart, and because I live in the United States, I ran this for the U.S. Capitol building in D.C. Now, of course, you can run these charts for wherever you want, but considering that this is going to be more of an overarching kind of energy and not necessarily personalized, I wanted to make it the capital of the United States of where I reside. Of course, you can run these charts for wherever you are. You can run it for your birth town, wherever you live, or the capital city of whatever country you're in. I presume that most of my audience is from the United States, although I know I have some people from Canada, of course, but that's why I'm running it this way. Also because, I want to talk about the potential events that we're going to see take place, and these events are going to be much more on a national scale and an international scale, for that matter. It's interesting too, though. We don't actually have a capital of the earth. We have states that have capitals, right? We have the countries that have a capital, but we don't have a capital of the earth. And I wonder if we ever will. I wonder if we ever did have a capital of the earth. Just something to think about. And, just throw out the question too. If there was a capital of the earth, where do you think it should be? Just for a little bit of fun. But the first thing, of course, that I noticed was the fact that Aries and Libra are intercepted. That is the first thing that I noticed with this. So we are dealing with a sun in Aries that's going to be intercepted. I'll talk a little bit more on that, but that does let me know that this is going to be a very fated year, and there's going to be a lot of things that are outside of our control. There's going to be a lot of things that are outside of our control. And there's going to be an element of needing to go with the flow of things, but also if we know who we are, we will find ourselves in positions where we are valued a lot more, right? Okay, so this year, if I was running this chart as like a birth chart, this year is an Aquarius rising, so that means that the chart ruler is Uranus, right? It's sun in Aries in the second house, and it's also going to be a moon in Sag in the 10th. So double fire and air. Now, granted, there is a good amount of water energy. We have that Mars in Cancer, we have Saturn in Pisces, as well as the North Node. And then, of course, we have that Mercury and Venus in Aries. And then we have Jupiter over there in Gemini just kind of hanging out doing its thing. So this is definitely a very interesting chart. You can see that there are quite a few trines. There's some oppositions as well. But as far as the big three, Sun in Aries, which always will be Sun in Aries, Moon in Sag with an Aquarius rising, right? So let's break this down pretty much house by house and kind of just, I'll talk about what it means, what it could mean for the collective, and the potential things that we can see happen here and how important those are, right? Now, let's start, of course, with that first house, right? In Aquarius, right? So that means that Uranus is the chart ruler, and traditionally it would be Saturn, but since we are in modern times, of course, Uranus rules Aquarius. So pretty much everything in that first house is going to be influenced by what Uranus does, right? So where is Uranus? Well, we got Uranus over here at 24 degrees of Taurus. Now, why is this significant? Well, if we are to say, look up another chart, and I'm going to find another chart to go to real fast because I know, let's see, if you go to my charts, or those are not my charts, it's going to be, you have to like, specific charts, select charts, open, files, samples. That's what I want to do. I wanted to go to Donald Trump. I want to select that chart. I want to select it as chart number 2. And we're going to go back to this right here. All right. So now this is obviously very important, right? So, and actually I might just switch these, right? So the outer ring, of course, is the equinox point, and that inner one is going to be Trump's. Now, what's interesting about this one, right, is that we have to look at this right here. The fact that we have Uranus in Taurus, and it is actually on Donald Trump's midheaven. It's on his 10th house. Uranus is a disruptor. Uranus rules electricity. Uranus also rules social media. It rules earthquakes. And let's just be real about Donald Trump. Regardless of how you look at him, regardless of the way that if you support him or if you don't support him, he is definitely a tyrant bull in a fucking China cabinet and is a China shop and is knocking everything down. And the 10th house does rule government. It does rule politics. It does rule these sort of things. It rules your legacy. It rules your purpose. It rules all those sort of governmental structures. And Taurus, being the bull, and it's Uranus, which is disruptive. He was destined to disrupt the government. Regardless if it's a positive thing or a negative thing, he was destined to do this with Uranus at this spot. The other thing about this, of course, is the fact that we have, and it's not listed here, but maybe I can actually bring it up. I might be able to add it later, but the fixed star Algol is here, which adds another element of destruction, if you will. It has alcohol is a big thing here too, which apparently he does not drink and stuff either, but he is most certainly a bull in a shop knocking everything over. A very disruptive bull, and that's what he was meant to do, especially for his second term. His first term, he actually tried to play by the rules, which is kind of the crazy thing. Donald Trump tried to play by the rules, right? And found out that there are some people that he could trust and some people that he could not trust. But the people that he could not trust, that he did trust, right, ended up stabbing him in the back in many ways, or end up trying to take him down. This go around, he is taking no prisoners because he has nothing to lose. It's not like he's going to run again, although you're starting to see like these people saying that he's going to run again, whatever like that, and they're going to try and figure out a way around term limits and shit like that. Honestly, I don't even think Donald Trump is even interested in that. Even if they could fucking pull that off, I don't think he'd be interested in it. But the fact of the matter is that the Uranus rules this year, and this Uranus is on his midheaven. It's kind of a big deal. We can also see a couple other things here. We can see that Jupiter is on his natal Uranus within about 4 degrees, right? We can see that the Mars is going to be on his Saturn as well, right? He has Saturn at 23 degrees of Cancer. Mars is right there. I have a feeling that there are some restrictions, believe it or not, on Donald Trump. But I'm curious to see what happens once Mars goes direct. Well, I mean, Mars is direct, but actually goes past his Saturn and his Venus. I'm interested to see what happens when Mars actually ingresses back into Leo and ingresses back into his 12th house, where Pluto resides and his Mars resides, right? So this lets me know that there's definitely some hidden stuff going on, some hidden enemies, especially with Mars and Pluto there. I've seen some astrologers predict some interesting things. I mean, yeah, there's already been a couple of assassination attempts on him. We probably will see more, at the very least, violent. But since this is 12th house, this is going to be rather hidden. There's also a spiritual aspect to this, too. So I wouldn't be surprised that once Mars reaches his Pluto, he has some sort of spiritual revival and may even take some sort of action based off of that. But it'll be interesting to see. Now, if we look at where Pluto currently lies, which is in Aquarius, that puts it in the third house, right? So he's going through, the opposition. And generally, the Pluto opposition, of course, occurs much later in life, right? So the Pluto opposition usually does take out the previous generation. If not, it'll be like soon into the other one. But considering the fact that Pluto's going to be in Aquarius for a while, you know, the you know, and obviously like he's older, so who knows how much longer he has, but he's still in relative good health as well, considering his lifestyle, considering the fact that this dude doesn't sleep and all he does is eat is McDonald's. I think it's kind of interesting, but it's just something I wanted to point out because and the other cool thing about it is that he has Saturn trining his Saturn right now for this uh for this equinox, right? The Saturn is right here at 23 degrees of Pisces. It's actually trining his natal Saturn at 23 degrees of Cancer. So that's a good omen. Try to, even though it's in water signs, that's a good omen. So, and of course, this is happening from his 8th house to his 11th house. So this can definitely, this may deal with some type of spiritual secret, if you will, some type of spirit. This is why I was thinking of spiritual revival, because the 8th house is a house of transformation as well. And with that being in the 11th house, this can affect his public persona, his public perception as well. So we may see something interesting pop up around that too. So just some things to keep in consideration. Now, the sun, of course, that is intercepted in the sun moving into Aries at 0 degrees, this for him is actually landing in his 8th house. So there's going to be some element of him trying to find his home in the 8th house, even though he personally, and this what's interesting too, is that he himself has interceptions. His Mars, his Saturn and his Venus are intercepted. Mars is going to be hitting those spots, right? So there's aspects here where a lot of the things surrounding this man are going to be fate. And of course, since he is the leader of of America, the United States of America, right? Obviously, a lot of his energy is going to affect the country as a whole and other people as a whole, right? So it's important to kind of look at those things. And there's a reason why we look at different political figures and different people over time to look at their chart and see how it affects overall. But considering the fact that he has this Mars traveling through his intercepted Cancer and will eventually hit this Saturn and eventually hit this Venus, I'm expecting to see, ironically, some type of interesting revival. So it could be a thing where maybe he goes to the hospital and then Vance has to take over or something, but then he rises out of that and is almost like a new person. Not completely new, but definitely refreshed and reborn. That could happen, and it will affect his public persona too. So I know that's a pretty bold prediction to say that potentially a president could end up, having to go to the hospital. But these are just predictions and stuff like that, and they may come true, they may not come true. I'm just looking at the astrology, and I'm seeing the fact that because these are interceptions, especially with that Mars, with the Saturn and the Venus, and the Sun, like I said, trying to find its way because it is intercepted here. It's going to be interesting, and right? It's going to be interesting for all of us to try and find pretty much who we are. So, this first house, Aquarius, it's ruled by Uranus. It's in the 3rd house. So, like I said, there's going to be a lot of things about disruptions when it comes to finances, when it comes to money, and of course, how we communicate these things, and even the exchange of such. There's going to be disruptions. We may see other currencies pop up. I know some people probably will look at this and be like, oh, cryptocurrency. But honestly, I don't think that's going to be it. I think it's going to be something else. I think the fact that cryptocurrency arose in the old world lets me know that it's not really going to be the thing that makes it to the new world or going to be the game changer of the new world. It's not crypto. It's something else that none of us can really expect, and it's going to come out of nowhere. And we don't know what it is yet. So it's not crypto. I'm not saying to not invest in all that sort of stuff, but I'm also not a financial advisor. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, it's not crypto. It's something else. But everyone will be talking about it by year's end, right? By the end of the astrological new year, right? Of course, we also do have Saturn here in the first house. Now, granted, it is in Pisces, but it's in the first house too. So that brings about an interesting flavor too, considering the fact that Saturn is a traditional ruler of Aquarius. This Saturn in Pisces, we're all are definitely trying to find our way. Saturn is the captain of a ship. He's trying to navigate these waters, and it's the first house. So trying to navigate who you are. What are you doing here? What is your spiritual purpose too, right? And I think that's the thing about it. And it's interesting too because the North Node pops up here in the second house. So there's almost this sort of weird division where we may even feel that like it might be too hard to step more into, what is that we truly value? Because that's the second house, right? So let's move on to that. What is it that we truly value, right? What is it that we almost hold? What is it that we even hold as sacred, if you will? Now it's confusing here. This North Node is in between this Saturn and this Neptune, right? So now because Aries is in the second house, but it's undefined, meaning it does not have its own house rulership, and Aries is all about identity, and it's about the head, it's about action, it's about impulses, right? It's going to be undefined and hard to find. Same with this Venus, same with this Mercury, and same with this Chiron. So that's the weird thing about this. Now, the best way I can explain interceptions to you is think of each of these houses as an actual house. And you have the house lord, i.e., the planet that rules over that particular sign, right? So the house ruler of the second house, Pisces, is Neptune. Neptune happens to be here, right? Aries has no house ruler. It doesn't own a house. Essentially, he's renting. Aries is essentially renting the second house, but it's not actually his. So in astrological terms, he's effectively homeless. So this means that when it comes to the way that we identify, the way that we put ourselves out there, the way that we take actions, it's going to feel bewildering. It's going to feel like it doesn't have as much direction. It's going to feel aimless, and we're going to be feeling pretty much at the whim of whatever Neptune wants. Because if Aries had its defined house, even if the house of Aries, say, started at 5 degrees of Aries, right? And the sun was still back in the house that's ruled by Pisces, at least the sign that it's in has a defined house ruler, and it eventually will go there, right? So that's the interesting thing about it too. Because you think about it, say if the sun was going through Pisces and then it reaches Aries, but it's still in the previous house because the house of Aries doesn't start until a particular degree. This is why I prefer Placidus instead of whole sign, because it adds this other element. Whole sign, it makes things easier as far as some things, but also it removes a lot of nuance and intricate details that are needed for astrology to get that deeper layer of understanding. So the sun's going to go through Aries, and it's still going to be in the same house. It's never actually going to come home, if you will. It's going to be in the same place, right? So similarly, this energy will kind of play out for all of us, right? Now, at least especially here in the United States, is trying to find who we are. And because this is the second house, it's how do we even come to value who we are if we're trying to find who we are, right? We have Venus here that's retrograde, right? We have Mercury here that's retrograde. So the planet of course, the way that we receive things is the planet of relationships, and of course it likes to be in the second house, but it is in detriment, so it's not exactly the best place for Venus. And then you have Mercury here, which is trying to figure things out, but it can't really deliver the message like it wants to. So there's going to be this element where I think a lot of people are going to be wanting to even maybe communicate more of who they are, what they are, their values. And the question is how is it going to land? This may actually, a lot of people may feel like they're speaking into the void and it's not actually going anywhere. And then that can cause some frustration, especially with that Chiron here in Aries, albeit it is coming forward, but it's still in Aries and it's intercepted. So we have four energies that don't really have a place to call home, right? They don't really have a place to call home in this Aries energy. Because you think about the planets as like the actual food, and think of like the sign as the sort of flavor, if you will. That's how different things. It's like you can. That's why you can season chicken with different things, and it can taste different, right? But it's still chicken, right? So the core of who it is isn't going to change, but the flavor is going to be a little bit different, right? That's the interesting thing about astrology, right? So, and also, of course, the houses also play into it. That can kind of play into the sort of arrangement of it or what it's kind of served on, right? You can eat pizza on a napkin, you can use no napkin, or you can use very, very fine china, right? So, that's kind of the interesting thing about this. We are going to be in an intercepted Sun in Aries year, astrological year, trying to find our place. And whenever I see interceptions, I'm like, it's fate. It's you have to remember who you are. So it's like that scene from The Lion King. Remember who you are. That's interceptions right there, right? It is, you know, trying to find a place to call home, if you will. But because that this is Aries and it's about the self, the place that is home is within you. It's not necessarily a particular place, but it is within you. And we have to learn how to value that more and have that more in a, you know, for people that don't have high self-esteem, or for people that aren't at least working on their self-esteem, this is going to be a difficult year. For people that are confused about their identity and who they are, this is going to be a difficult year. For people that have the inability to communicate in their relationships what their needs are, this is going to be a difficult year. For the people who overly identify with their hurts, their wounds, and their traumas, this is going to be a difficult year. So that's the thing that we have to look into and take into consideration with this. Like I said, though, the ruler of the second house, Neptune, happens to be here as well. So it just adds more to the confusion. And considering the fact that we will see the sun ingress into Aries at the end of the month here, is going to send a shockwave of energy. Some type of massive event, but it's going to send a shockwave of energy that's going to have everyone questioning who they are, what they are, why they're here, what they're doing, if you will, and even almost what is the purpose of it all. Not to sound like nihilistic, because it's anything but nihilistic, actually. Because you can interpret it that way, but it doesn't actually have to be that way. This actually gives us a great opportunity to, you know, course correct, if you will. Interceptions are like course correcting kind of energies for your soul, if you will, right? So let's look at the third house. Now, the third house ruler, of course, being that the third house is Taurus, the third house ruler traditionally will be Venus, but it's actually the Earth. So, and the Earth isn't shown here, but the Earth is always opposite that of the Sun, right? So, the Earth is at 0 degrees of Libra, and it's intercepted in what? The 8th house. So, when it comes to the third house, when it comes to communication, when it comes to the way that we relate to each other, exchanging of information, and with Earth being here in the 8th house of Libra, of course, coming off of that full moon lunar eclipse that we just had, which I don't know if you guys got a chance to see it, but it was actually pretty freaking cool. I actually stayed up so I can watch it. I think I took a nap earlier in the day, and then I stayed up because I went to karaoke, then I stayed up to make sure I got to go out and actually see it early in the morning. Here on the East Coast, it was like 3 something in the morning. I got a chance to go see it. But this is the eighth house, and the eighth house is what about shared resources? It's the place of transformation. But I want to look more at the shared resources aspect because this is Libra. So there can definitely be some interesting, I would say, disruptions because Uranus is here too. There can be disruptions when it comes to diplomatic aspects, breaking down of treaties, the establishment of new treaties, right? There's definitely going to be some shakeups in the international socio-political sphere, if you will. The people, the countries that you always thought were going to be allies may become enemies, and the countries that you thought were your enemies may become your allies. This is kind of change of heart kind of energy, and it'll be interesting to see how exactly this plays out. But I would not be surprised to see several, unions break down, several unions come up, and then of course everyone's going to be trying to figure out how they feel about it and what they think about it too, right? And what their place is within this changing dynamic. Because the fact of the matter is that the world was never going to just continue ticking along the way that it was. We just happened to be alive during the time where the biggest changes in all of our lives, the way that society looks and the way that society functions, is happening right now. It's happening right here. And it's not just happening in one day. It takes months. It's gonna take years, but it is playing out before our eyes. And so many people are clambering onto this old world, not realizing that it was always going to transform and become something different. Let's look at the fourth house, also ruled, of course, by Taurus because of these interceptions. So, once again, there's going to be this aspect of people trying to find their home and trying to figure out where they fit into this whole aspect. And people are going to be trying to figure out how they feel about it. Now, what's interesting about this, of course, that we have Jupiter here in the fourth house to kind of bring up some energy. But this Jupiter, of course, is in detriment. It can't expand the way that we want to. This is going to be about the way that you feel the most at home is going to be more so dependent upon how you're able to connect with the people in your local community. It's not necessarily going to be so much about the international and these international, relationships that we have and these foreign relationships that we have. They're going to be put center stage, but at the same time, since a lot of those things are going to be breaking down and transforming and molding and evolving, there's going to be a need to focus more on the local. There's going to be a need to focus more on your local community and not necessarily worrying about what may be happening in another part of the world. Not that we can't be aware of such, especially with the advent of the internet. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there's something that forces people to be local, and I mean maybe the internet goes out for like a week or two and then you're not able to get on social media, you're not able to see what's happening in Asia or Europe or Africa or Australia. You're not able to see what's happening in other part of the world. It forces you to communicate to the people in your local vicinity. This is the sort of energy that will actually force people to pay more attention to local politics, which if you can't already see, that is the trend that's happening, especially here in this country, where a lot of these departments and things are being dissolved and rights are being returned back to the states. There's going to be much more of a focus on the local level of things. And I actually think this is positive because then we're going to actually see that there wasn't just corruption on the national level, but there's corruption on the lower levels as well, the local levels. This will actually be great because then we realize that these are the things that affect us a lot more than the national or the international stuff. Not that those things don't affect us, but when we get down to brass tacks, it's the person next to you. It's the person that you may walk by in the grocery store every day without realizing it that could be affecting you more than you realize. So I think that's a positive thing to focus more on those energies. Fifth house is Gemini, which means that this fifth house is ruled by Mercury. Where's Mercury? It's intercepted in Aries and the second house, right? So, and there's no energies in this fifth house, right? So it's kind of a free-for-all, if you will. Now, of course, the fifth house is romance, it's creativity, it's passion, it's that, and especially with Gemini here too, but with Mercury retrograde in Aries and it's undefined, Some of you guys are, even though this is probably not the best time for just starting up a new relationship, some of you guys are going to find, I hate to even say it, but some of you guys are going to find someone who's destined, that you're destined to be with. Now, whether or not this actually becomes a longer thing, if you will, but I definitely expect a lot of summer romances. I expect a lot of summer flings. I expect some of these to even be like, not just like your standard, you hook up because like you're both visiting the beach and you hook up, whatever like that. This could be something like they actually like tickle a part of your soul that is like undeniable, and they're just it's just gonna have like a magnetic quality to it and an energy that you want to be around. But this Mercury's retrograde, so it's not really thinking too straight. It's not really, it's not really all the way there. It can't really get the word out there the way that it wants to and stuff. So it's interesting with this. Now, this can actually allow for a lot of creative energy as well, though, with Mercury here, because it's almost as if our pen or our quill is being guided by the universe. Though there's going to be an element of needing to even surrender here. Whenever I see intercepted planets, I think of an aspect of needing to surrender to the process. So with Mercury here, dispositing the this fifth house, if you will, right? But there's nothing there, and it's Gemini and Mercury is intercepted. There's an element of like, this can make for a very nice creative energy for us to have like really great ideas and epiphanies on what to do, what to produce, what to put out there. So that can be rather fun too. I also see surprise babies, surprise pregnancies that kind of come out of nowhere because this is intercepted. Maybe people that maybe have been waiting for a long time as well, potentially. Maybe you didn't think it was even possible, but somehow it is possible, right? Because this is an interception as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see anything like that as well. I think there's also going to be a lot of things about kids in general and kind of almost even redefining what kids are, I guess, allowed to do and allowed to have access to. So we already are starting to see some of this. Um, but there could be a thing. I know that they're already talking about taking cell phones out of schools, which I agree with. But there are a lot of things that are going to be surrounding children that are going to just be like, okay, do you value your child? How do we truly value children? And what can we do to foster their development in more positive and powerful ways? This makes sense too because a lot, especially with a lot of the new children, right, and stuff like that, a lot of these younger kids, a lot of them have Pluto towards the end of Capricorn, and a lot of them are going to be the Pluto and Aquarius babies. So it's smart to go ahead and start now because then we'll see how things are going to be like. Because that's the weird thing about this Pluto Aquarius. It's going to be here for 20 years. So you're going to have people who are 20 and 1 in the same generation technically. And usually it doesn't happen that way. Or at least while we've been alive, it hasn't been happening that way because Pluto has gone through the fastest part of the zodiac while, all of us have been alive, right? But now it's going to be longer. So it's going to be interesting to see how these new generations start to develop with Pluto having a longer transit through these respective signs, right? Now, the sixth house is Cancer, which means that it's ruled by the moon. This is an interesting one because this moon is over here in the 10th house, right? In Sagittarius. So there's this element here where people are going to be very emotional about their beliefs. People are going to be very emotional about their beliefs and how it shapes their world, right? The 10th house, in many ways, is like the world, right? So people are going to get very emotional about their beliefs and how it shapes their world and how it shapes their day-to-day reality, right? So, and what's interesting about this is that while Mars is here and this this Mars is being disposited by this moon, if you will, right? And the moon's in the 10th house, which is a place that Mars would love to be, but it can't be there. It's in Cancer, right? And the moon would probably rather be where Mars is. So interesting enough, there's a bit of a mutual reception here, despite the fact that Mars doesn't rule Sag, but it is a fire sign and it's in the 10th house, which Mars would much rather switch positions with that moon. So people are going to get very emotional about their beliefs because Mars is also here in the 6th house. I would not be surprised if there is some sort of increased militaristic action on the home front, if you will. Being that this is also the 6th house, there's going to be some things that pop up about, and because this is Cancer too, there could be some things that pop up about hospitals, maybe even pregnancies, maybe even just maybe how different medicines, there could be something that comes out where like a certain thing that we've been doing for such a long time actually negatively and adversely affects pregnancies, if you will. So that can actually, I can see that potentially popping up here. But there's definitely going to be something about the way that our day to day reality is and how there may be a shift, especially once the sun comes into Cancer and makes that official shift. Once the sun hits 12 degrees 11 minutes and actually shifts into the sixth house of this particular sign, we are going to see a major shift when it comes to that day-to-day reality, when it comes to that sort of thing. We may actually I don't, it might be weird. Maybe we see some martial law. Maybe we actually see tanks on the streets. We might actually see that. I'm not sure if it'll actually happen, but I'd imagine if there was some sort of event that does knock out the internet for like a week or two, people are going to go nuts. Let's just be real. People are going to go nuts. And there's going to be a need to corral the energy and to keep it contained. So we may actually see in an interesting way, because Sagittarius does also rule foreign places. I can actually see a potential retraction of our troops worldwide to come home to deal with the chaos here in the States and a lot of the changes and stuff like that as well. So would not be surprised to see anything like that happen. Now let's take a look at Leo. Leo, of course, is the ruler of this seventh house, which is the sun. Of course, the sun is intercepted right here in Leo. So, of course, this has everything to do with relationships. It can also deal with the way that we try and find balance in things, diplomatic stuff, the equalizer, if you will. The equalizer here, honestly, is for you to be your true authentic self. It's kind of simple. I mean, Regulus is here too, of course, right? The heart of the lion. And it's kind of actually somewhat at the midpoint of this energy. It's not quite exact, but 27 degrees. And then if you take, what was that? 8, so 22. Yeah, so 22 degrees. Yeah, so it's not quite at the midpoint of, the south node, or it's not quite at the midpoint here. Actually, no, maybe it actually is a little bit closer. Hold on. So 22 degrees and 25 degrees. So yeah, it's not quite the midpoint between, the cusp of the seventh and the eighth house, but it's damn near. And the heart is like, so there's an aspect here, I feel, where it's like, we need to have it's like a come to heart, come to Jesus, come to God kind of moment on all of our lives when it comes to our relationships, not only with ourselves, with other people, with our spouse, with our kids, with God, with spirit, the world itself. There's a sort of come to heart moment here that I see happening, especially once we get into the summer. That this obviously, because the sun is intercepted, because Venus is retrograde here, because Mercury is giving some influence here, and of course Chiron is giving some influence here too, and of course Neptune, which is conjunct the sun here at the time of this equinox, if you will. Summer of Love 2.0, I mean, it might actually end up being worse. We already are starting to see a ramp up of violent activity. And of course, Aries is about violence, it's about war. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? So, and it's intercepted. So, and Mercury is retrograde, Venus is retrograde. So, people aren't going to be in their right mind. So, there's a cautionary aspect to this as well, where we can definitely see a increase of violence this summer, and the need to try and find our heart through all this, and kind of come to what's the heart of the issue. I think maybe once the sun hits this Leo energy, and maybe even once it conjuncts this Regulus, we maybe can finally come to the heart of this reason, the heart of things, of why things are the way they are, why there's so much division, why there's so much separation, why there is so much hatred being spewed from all sides of the equation when it comes to how we feel like humans should live. Because that's all we're doing. That's all politics. How should humans live? It's the question that we have been asking ourselves for the entirety of our history. How should humans live? Right? And that how we should live changes over time, and changes based off of who wins the battles, who wins the wars. That's how we know Who wins the battles? Who wins the wars? Whether that war is fought with swords, whether it's fought with guns and cannons, or whether it's fought with words and actions and, you know, bills and laws, if you will. How should humans live? So I think, especially with this interception kind of energy, maybe we come to the heart of it or come to some sort of conclusion by the time that the summer arises and we get into the heat of things. Things are going to be cooking for sure, and there's going to be there is going to be violence, there's going to be impulsivity, but this can also offer people an opportunity to have a change of heart, if they will. I think that's actually the important thing to think about. Eighth house cusp is Virgo, so this is ruled by Mercury traditionally, but I am going to take a page out of Christopher Wojtecki's book because he says that it is Chiron, and I actually believe him. I actually think that's true. So I'm going to say that the ruler of Virgo is Chiron. So shout out to Christopher Wojtecki on that one. So Chiron, of course, being here in Aries, intercepted, so it doesn't have a defined place, and this is the 8th house, and the South Node is here too, right? The South Node, we have a South Node 8th house. Now, this is interesting. I actually have the South Node in the 8th house, so I can kind of speak to this energy. Now, granted, I have it in Cancer, not Virgo, but I kind of can speak to this energy. So the South Node, of course, is the energy that we're kind of born into. It's the energy that we kind of go back to, the energy that is comfortable, if you will. So there's a comfortability. So that's the thing. And there's a comfortability in the status quo and the way that things are. Not that Virgos just always follow the status quo, but Virgo is like your day-to-day reality. It's your service and stuff like that. So there is a sort of comfortability in the status quo. There's a comfortability in the ordinary. There's a comfortability. There's nothing wrong with ordinary, right? Sometimes we need that energy, but there is a comfortability here, right? And there's going to be this element where the reason why maybe something is the way it is because of some sort of trauma or wounding that has conditioned us to set up and organize our life in a way to where we don't have to meet and engage with certain stimuli that may trigger or reactivate a wound within us. Because we don't want to feel that pain. We don't want to feel that hurt. But there can be a transformative quality to this when we learn that we don't always have to hold our pain above our heart. And that is a lyric from a Jack Johnson song. So you don't always have to hold your pain above your heart, And, I think what we're seeing right now in the world, if I would just put it metaphorically, but I'll just even say, in my personal life and even just looking at the United States, a lot of people are holding their pain above their heart. And the pain, I'm not saying that the pain is not valid. I'm not saying that the pain doesn't make sense. I'm not saying that the pain doesn't deserve acknowledgement. But I'm saying is that when you hold your pain above your heart for too long, you can kind of forget who you are, why you came here. You can forget, what's truly important when you hold that pain above. Because the pain is egoic. No matter how we want to cut it and look at it, the pain is egoic because there's some aspect of you that got bruised and now your ego is damaged and it's hurt and it doesn't want to feel that again, right? It is a defense mechanism that we have as humans, right? But while that can provide us a sense of comfort, and while that can provide us a sense of security, oftentimes it can evolve into somewhat of a prison, and it can evolve into something that actually holds us back, right? It's just like if you go skateboarding, if you like skateboarding, you're new, right? And you fall down, you're gonna hurt yourself. You're gonna scrape your knees, right? Even if you wear pads, you're gonna hurt yourself. Do you allow the experience of that pain and then your ego's like, I don't want to do that again, that hurt? Do you allow that to stop you from keep trying to nail that trick? Some people do, and I think we all do in certain things. But this is why some people get good at some things and not others. It's because the person that wanted to learn how to do that trick forgot about their ego and just did it They went through it. They went through the pain and they did it and they ended up landing the trick. But some people drop it. But maybe that person that dropped it, maybe they were able to get past their ego in another place. Maybe they were able to get past their ego in a place where the skateboarder would have folded. And that's the beautiful thing about life, is that where your strengths lie and where your weaknesses lie, your weakness could be someone else's strength. And then that's how we can come together and create this, I'm being poetic, this beautiful woven tapestry that is humanity. And that we all don't have to be the same. And we shouldn't all be the same. Because your weaknesses are someone's strengths and your strengths are someone's weaknesses. And we can work together. But we have to find that thing that we're willing to keep getting up and trying to land that trick. No matter how many times we fall down, no matter how many times we scrape our knee, no matter how many times we hit our fucking head, we get over the ego's need to keep us safe and to keep us secure and to keep us out of danger. And we charge headfirst into it and realize our destiny. Woo, that was good. That was good. Can you tell I have the South Node in the 8th house? Shit. Let's look at the 9th house. It's Scorpio. Scorpio, right? So, and like I said, that's the thing about Libra too. Is I just skipped over Libra, but Libra doesn't have a defined house. So Venus is over here dispositing a place that it's dispositing a place that's just renting out, right? So that's the weird thing about Venus when it comes to the way that we want to be received and even relationships. It's gonna be hard to kind of even figure that out because it's not defined. It doesn't have a space to call its own. So that's the weird thing about it. That's why I say this is gonna be a weird year for relationships, especially new ones, because it does feel fated, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it has its own definition. So honestly, any relationships and any new relationships that come out of this year and last a couple years, that's a strong relationship. That's a go, and that's something you got to hold on to. Now, for those people who are currently in relationships, there's definitely a lot of transformative energy here. But because Venus is in Aries, I could definitely see fights, divorces, definitely transformations, because this is the 8th house. This does deal with shared resources, so the splitting of resources, the splitting of money can be very, very toxic. I'm not even gonna lie, because this Venus is retrograde here. It can get kind of gross, right? So there are gonna be relationships that are going to be battle tested during this. Not every single relationship is going to make it, but we may even see some very high profile divorces between celebrities that end up being very nasty. It's not going to be in between. It's either going to be very, very nasty or very, very just, all right, let's just split equally, go about our separate ways and we're good. But I have a feeling that at least the ones that are shown to us the most and kind of propped up are going to be very, very public, very, very big, very, very nasty, and the splitting of all those shared resources is going to be wild. This Venus is in Aries, so she's that's the thing about Venus and Aries. Venus, anyone with Venus and Aries, especially women, these are fiery individuals. I love Venus and Aries, honestly, too. They are fiery individuals. They have this allure to them that's undeniable, right? But it's hard to sustain their attention. It's Aries. So it's you got to be a very interesting motherfucker to sustain the attention of someone with Venus and Aries. Otherwise, they will just move on to someone else that can receive their energy in a more powerful way, or they can try to receive someone's energy in a more powerful way. But you got to be interesting in order to keep this person's attention. So the good thing about this energy too is that I feel like, honestly, relationships that do fragment is because there is a lack of interesting energy. There's a lack of fire. There's a lack of passion within the relationship. It has grown stale. It has grown cold. So there's going to be this element here too, where it's if you notice that maybe your relationship or other relationships are on the rocks, it's because they're doing the same shit that they've been doing for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You got to spice it up. So the relationships that do last this year are going to be the relationships that decide to spice things up, do something fun, and kind of push the envelope a little bit. Maybe even experiment with some shit. I don't know. But that's what it's going to be. It can't just be the same thing, because if it's the same thing, it's not going to end well. Now we can get to the ninth house. Ninth house ruler is going to be Pluto, which of course is in the 12th house. The ninth house, of course, is all about education. It's about foreign places. It's about, learning. It's about, travel and all this sort of stuff. But Pluto, of course, is here in Aquarius, which is the sky. It's in the 12th house. And of course, Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, is up here in the third. We'll probably honestly will see a increase of air disasters, unfortunately, with this kind of energy, especially since it's Pluto, right? So we may see an increase of that. We also could potentially see, and we already have gotten confirmation of it too. So this is sort of after the fact. So this is no great nirvana or prediction, but because this is Scorpio, and Scorpio traditionally is ruled by Mars, and Mars is all about, Mars is a war-like energy, right? It does rule war. It does rule those sort of things. But because it's Scorpio, it's secretive. So this is like the Black Ops. Like Aries is sort of like, just the regular infantrymen. Scorpio is like the Black Ops. They're like the Navy SEALs, if you will. They have specialized covert missions that not everyone could just take on. Now, because this is the ninth house, and because Pluto, of course, is positing this, it's here in the 12th house in Aquarius. We got that whole thing about the the US-47, like some sort of new stealth bomber that's just like an insane sort of technology. That's very much so this ninth house Scorpio, right? There could also be, in many ways, either a transformation or a retraction of air travel. Would not be surprised if we may even get a new type of plane that kind of comes out of this. Maybe a safer way to travel. But there's definitely going to be a lot of disruptions when it comes to air travel and different things like that. So new technologies that can come out around air travel, and also even an upgrade in regulations. So a lot of these things could stop happening, but unfortunately they're going to keep happening. But there's going to be something when it comes to that kind of energy. And because it's a Scorpio, it's kind of secretive as well. Now, because this is the ninth house, and this is also dealing with foreign places, and Pluto is dispositing this. You have Black Moon Lilith here. You have Vesta here. I would not be surprised if we see a world leader actually go down in an airplane. We've already been seeing that, so that's no great nirvana because it's happened. But we could see another world leader that actually perishes in a plane crash, and it'll of course be massive news, and it will be rather shocking, and it will send shockwaves throughout whatever country that is. So we could potentially see that as well. We already are seeing the dissolution of we're already seeing the Department of Education, of course, being dissolved, right? And, this is ninth house. Education is being disposited by Pluto, which is Aquarius. And, of course, that's the interesting thing about this. If this was in Capricorn, I think it'd be different, but it's in Aquarius. So a lot of it has to do with the way that we even think about education and these sort of things as well. So I call it the Department of Indoctrination personally. But we already are starting to see a transformative quality that's happening around that. What is it going to look like? We were able to get by without the Department of Education before. We'll be able to get by without it, right? So what does the new system look like? We're already starting to see some changes when it comes to that. The 10th house, of course, is being disposited also by this Pluto. And of course, this is going to play out a little bit more in the socio-political aspect of things. Of course, we do have this moon over here in Sag. So regardless of the way you feel about it, people's beliefs are going to be very much so intertwined with the government. It's going to be very much so intertwined with policies. And that's the weird thing about this too, is, and I'm already starting to see it. And this is the part where, because I voted for Trump. Who the fuck cares, right? I voted for Trump, right? And it's because, I felt like he was a better candidate, right? I don't like everything that he has done or said or whatever like that. I just felt like he was the better candidate, whatever. But that's the weird thing, that's my issue with the right, is that too often they allow, and he's not even overtly religious, although he may end up becoming religious this year. I can see Donald Trump becoming religious this year. Like having like a change of heart and like really like coming out and just like being more religious. Or maybe he takes the RFK route and does mushrooms and becomes like super spiritual and shit, right? But it's like a lot of times the right or the conservatives and Republicans, they always will get their religion kind of mixed into politics, and they're really not supposed to do that. There's supposed to be a separation of church and state. But being that this 10th house does have a moon in Sag with it, and Juno is here, and Antares is here too. There's certainly an element here where people are definitely going to be getting their religious beliefs mixed up into politics and policies, and that's not going to make everyone happy. So, and that's usually where they freaking drop the ball for me personally. Is that not that there's anything overtly like wrong with religion per se, but I do find it generally to be restrictive in the way that we view the world. I think the moral tradition aspects of religions, and like I said, once again, this is the question that we're asking ourselves: how should humans live, right? So different religions have their different interpretations on how humans should live, right? But apparently, all these ways are working because people are doing it. Maybe they're not working for you, but if you were born into it, you wouldn't know the difference. You wouldn't know the difference, right? So that's the thing about this. So emotionally, people are going to be a little bit more wrapped up in those sort of things. Emotionally, people are going to be a little bit more wrapped up in the world and what they believe about the world too. But like I said, there's this element here where the ruler of the house still is Pluto, and it's 12th house, and it's in Aquarius. So yes, there's going to be simultaneously this sort of emotional pull to focus more on the world and international stuff. At the same time, the universe is also asking us to focus more on the local and the people in our local vicinity and our local community. It's gonna be like this sort of like magnet, like it's sort of like this pulling kind of energy, if you will. So, and that's the thing. That's the interesting thing about Sag moons too, right? Sag moons, it's hard to get them to rest, even more so than a Sag like sun, right? So let's just look at it from that aspect, right? And also, the moon is in the 10th house. It doesn't want to be in the 10th. It wants to be in the 4th house, all right? This is an emotional leader. This is an emotional leader that they believe that their beliefs should be the beliefs of everyone below them, right? And that's the thing about this. So we can see that definitely happen more. But someone gets so much into their beliefs and what they feel is right that they feel like they need to create and enact policies based off of said emotion. Where yeah, it could be good for some people, but it's not going to be good for everybody. And that's the thing that we have to take into consideration here. Now, the 11th house ruler, being that the 11th house is Sagittarius, is Jupiter. And Jupiter, of course, is here in the 4th house, right? So, of course, there's nothing over here in the 11th house, but this, of course, is dealing with friendships, whether you connect to other people, your and somewhat of a sense of identity, but this is sort of like the rebellious like quality too. They say that Aquarius is the rebellion while simultaneously it rules the drone, so it's kind of an interesting thing too. So with this Jupiter being here in the 4th house, once again, this is going to be rather emotional. And people are going to be more comfortable in, expanding in the areas that, don't really deviate too much from their beliefs and the norm, if you will. So that's the thing about it. So you're going to probably see, and this is also social media. So we already are starting to see it, but you probably will start to see a little bit more of a fracturing of social media. You probably will start to see new social medias pop up, especially once Uranus moves into Gemini eventually. But you'll probably start to see more of those pop up. And this is also echo chambers. Because remember, Jupiter's in Gemini, doesn't like to be there. This is echo chambers. So people will be in these certain social media platforms and they're going to stick to their respective places in their respective cities. If you were to look at a social media platform, right, and look at it as a city, right, Look at us as a city. There are essentially people that are just boycotting entire cities. Like people are boycotting X, people are boycotting whatever, right? That, and they're choosing to not do that. So they're going to stay within their own city, if you will. So there's an aspect here where people may self-segregate based off of their comfortability levels and based off of what they believe in. Now, this will just create a little bit more of a divide, if you will. This will probably create a little bit more of, like I said, these echo chambers and people also hyping and gassing themselves up. This is definitely an energy of gassing yourself up. Now, I don't think, now naturally you want to hang out with people that are like you, that have similar interests, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think once things get a little bit more like political, and then you add the religious aspect, and you add all of these other things about how should humans live, if you will, right? And then you try to enforce that on other people, that's when things get kind of weird. I think it's better to, you know, well, that's the thing about it too. I mean, it's like you can, what's that saying? It's like you can take a horse to the water, but you can't force it to drink. I think a lot of people are trying to force people to drink something. It's like, oh, drink this, drink that, drink this, drink that. It's like, well, hold on, wait a minute. Let me smell it first. Let me inspect it first. Maybe I don't want to drink it. You know, that person drank it and they didn't really like it. So how do I know? Like, that's the thing about it too. It's like I feel like there's this element here where people are going to be trying to force people to drink something that they don't necessarily want to drink, if you will. This is the 11th house. This is naturally ruled by Aquarius, too, right? So there's an element here where it's like, just because something may be good for you doesn't mean it's good for another person. But I think it's also good to have nuance here and to try and understand the other person, trying to understand and learn about different people, different cultures, different ideas, different beliefs. This is the 10th house after all. I mean, this is, excuse me, the 11th house after all, which is Sag, and Jupiter, of course, is here in Gemini. So this is actually about how can we learn, how can we utilize our curiosity and learn about other people that maybe not necessarily see everything eye to eye with us. Can we get along with these individuals, or do we cut them off? So you're going to probably see people cutting people off, but you will also see more echo chambers. You will see people gassing themselves up because the only people that they surround themselves with are people that believe exactly what they believe in. And this can cause delusions of grandeur where they think that the way that they think is how everyone thinks, but then the moment that they go out into the real world, they'll notice that there's a lot more variance, and that can confuse the fuck out of them because they'll be like, how is no one else thinking the same way that I'm doing? How dare they live a different life than me? It's because you put yourself into a box and you put yourself into an echo chamber where everyone is saying the same thing. So that's all you're programming yourself with. It's about getting out. That's why I said go into your local community. Get off the internet. This is like go out and meet people and don't just sit on X all day or YouTube or Blue Sky or Facebook or fucking Discord or whatever. Get out and actually meet people. That's where you should go. That's the best place to go for this, right? So, and of course, we have the 12th house, which is ruled by Capricorn. So that's going to be Saturn over here in Pisces. And of course, Pluto's here in the 12th house as well. So when it comes to 12th house, when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to the hidden zone, when it comes to the need to surrender, when it comes to all these sort of things, and Saturn, of course, being here in this first house, Pisces dispositing it, and Pluto, of course, is here as well. Yeah, everything's changing. The world that we know is changing. You know, Capricorn is the world card in tarot. The world that we know is changing. A lot of the structures are changing. A lot of the policies are changing. And, you know, we are learning how to navigate this boat, if you will. You know, Saturn is the captain of a ship. It's here in Pisces. It's close to the North Node. It's close to Neptune. It won't conjunct Neptune this year. It won't conjunct Neptune until next year when they both ingress into Aries. So that's the weird thing about it. So Neptune will ingress into Aries, and then Saturn will, but then they won't actually conjunct. They'll go back into Pisces, and they'll both come back into Aries, and then finally conjunct. So that's the thing about this is that we don't really know where this thing is going. We don't really know where this thing is going, but we are trusting in the skills that we've developed along the way to know how to navigate. We may not necessarily know where this boat is going, but this is like how a captain may not necessarily know where their boat's going. That's how you discover new lands, but they know how to navigate the winds. They know how to read the winds. They know how to read the waters. They know when a storm is coming because of the skills that they developed, and then they land somewhere new, right? I think so many times in life we look at the destination and we're like, okay, I want to get there, but then we forget about all of our skills along the way and stuff like that. And oftentimes that's not how life turns out. Oftentimes it's like we have the skills and we learn things and we start to sail out towards something, and maybe we have an idea of what we want to find, but we end up landing somewhere else, the place that we were supposed to be. The place that we were supposed to be. So there's a surrendering aspect to this. And with Pluto, of course, here in Aquarius in the 12th house of this particular chart as well, there is a massive transformative quality to this whole year, spiritually for us, and the way that we organize our lives and the way that we, ask ourselves the question, how should humans live? All right. So, but yeah, that is, I would say in a nutshell, but this video has gone over an hour long. So that is the equinox at Sun 00 Aries, going over the 12 houses and how we can see this proliferate and show itself in, the astrological year from 0 Aries to 29 degrees of Pisces. Now, of course, while this energy is in many ways like a rubber stamp on the year and can show how this year is going to be influenced, of course, things are going to change, especially once we hit the sun in Cancer, where a new flavor is added and we take that first turn, if you will. So, we'll refer back to this chart, but once the sun goes into Cancer, I will talk about that first turning, if you will, and the new flavor and what that chart's energy is going to be bringing on top of what we already have right here. I will go ahead and draw a card for everybody, and then I will go ahead and make my exit. But I trust that this message will at least give you some insight into things. I trust that it makes sense for you and helps you out. I know I didn't go over the 12 signs, but I kind of wanted to just do like a general reading of the chart for really everybody. So I trust that this message, like I said, will assist you on your journey. And yeah, just these are the kind of videos I want to do more of, so. And it doesn't hurt to draw a card at the end, especially with this one. This is the Tarot of the Dragons, and I'm like, I love dragons, so it's like, definitely want to do this. So, all right, so let's see what we got going on here. Interesting. I have the Ten of Cups, but it's in reverse. This actually is not really a bad thing. This is not a bad thing. I think it's like we're all wanting us to feel a certain way, but the feeling that actually comes is going to be better than we could have even imagined. So it's like, don't be afraid. Keep putting yourself out there. Keep working towards your dreams. That sounds so cute, right? Keep working. I'm wearing a dragon right here too. Keep working towards your dreams. Keep moving it forward. And even though this Ten of Cups is in reverse, this is not a bad thing at all. It's not a bad thing at all. I think this is going to be one of those things where it's like, we'll look back on it and be like, you know what? That was supposed to happen. That was a crazy, wild astrological year, but it was absolutely meant to happen. It was supposed to happen, and honestly, it ended up better than I could have possibly even imagined. That's what Ten of Cups in reverse is. It's the dream ended up being better than you possibly could have even imagined. So there's a level of surrendering to the process. There's a level of fate here. There's a lesson here of trusting in the process too. Ten of Cups in the reverse is trust the process. It'll work out. It may not seem like it, but it will work out. And that's really what we have going on for the year. Bottom of the deck, I have the Fool card in reverse. So I love that both of these cards are in reverse, actually, because so I can read it both ways. So that's the thing about it. You have to dare to be a fool to go after what you want. You have to dare to be a fool to bliss yourself out, if you will. So it's like, don't fall for The whole, oh, don't go that way, don't walk off that cliff, or don't do that thing, you know, that's foolish, whatever like that. Dare. Dare to move, right? Dare to believe. Dare to be you. Truly you, authentically you. Dare to be you, especially in a year, like I said, where the sun is intercepted in Aries. It's more pertinent than ever to know who you are and to dare to be who you are. Defy the odds, and it will end up better than you could have ever imagined. There are definitely there's a lot of good energy here, a lot of trines and stuff like that, but that doesn't necessarily, sometimes I feel like we take the positive aspects for granted, right? So, of course, there are going to be bumps, there are going to be trips, there's going to be, you know, there's going to be troll stops, there's going to be toll booths this whole year, you know, and life doesn't come without the toll roads. You know, you want to just kind of fly through, but sometimes you got to pay a toll. That's fine. It lets you know how much you value really getting to that destination that you want to get to, right? So think about that. But y'all take care, stay blessed. I trust that this message will assist you on your journeys, and I will see you all on the next video. This has been your astrologer Jay Phoenix. I'm out. Peace.